Good morning. Welcome, everybody, to our Mindset Matters series, where shared experiences connect people. And on behalf of the Encompas team here at Dalton Associates, we are really pleased today to have you with us, Robert. Rob Pilon is president of the OPP VA Association, and he is our featured guest today, so thank you. Rob, for being here. I also want to thank Carl, who's going to be facilitating this session today. Carl Dalton is our CEO here at Dalton, and we're really pleased to be having this session. Now, before we get started, I'm just going to do a couple of housekeeping reminders, and then we'll officially introduce you there, Rob. So, first of all, I want to remind everybody that this session is being recorded, and we will host that on the Encompas website. All cameras and microphones have been purposely disabled because we want this to be a safe and an anonymous opportunity for you to participate. That said, we're very interested in your questions and your comments, so that please do use the Q&A feature to submit those through to us. And those questions, for your information, will only come to the Encompas team and to Rob. And we'll keep an eye on those, and we'll raise them up for Rob and Carl and throughout the discussion. So with that in mind, I'm officially introducing you, Rob. Thank you so much again for being here.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, Rob is a retired OPP officer. For those who may not know him, he's had 30-year career in with the OPP, and he in fact served in many different detachments and held progressively higher ranks throughout his 30-year career. He's been a member of the OPPVA, the Veterans Association, since 1999. And a member of the board of directors since 2016. And then in 2022, he was elected president. I was pleased to be there at that session when I heard that news. Rob is, at a personal level, married the wonderful Suzanne, which many of you may know. They married in 1967, and they have 4 children. Janine is their eldest. She followed her dad into policing and recently retired herself as a sergeant in the OPP North Bay Provincial Communications Center. And then Mike, his son, is chief superintendent at Northeast Regional Headquarters with the OPP. And then Rob's other 2 children are both very successful educators. And together, Rob and Sue have 10 grandchildren, 1 great-granddaughter. They reside in Sturgeon Falls. And Rob is joining us today from the warm, sunny south of Florida. So thank you so much. And with that, I'll hand things over to Carl and Rob.
Thanks, Louise. And Rob, I'll just ask you just offline here, just send me the address here. I'm going to look at my air miles and look at outside here. Maybe I can get a trip down to the sunny South Florida. Sounds pretty nice right now for me as we move next week into March break for my kids. And thanks for that introduction, Louise, of Rob. And I think the focus on the family is something, in any introduction should be first and foremost, because I've met Suzanne. I've had a chance to meet Mike as well. And, I've learned a lot as well from my friends and colleagues in remote First Nation communities in Northern Ontario about talking about your family first and when you're introducing yourself. So, Rob, thanks a lot. I sort of like to, wiggle my way into Mindset Matters every now and again. And when I heard that you agreed to share your story, I jumped at the opportunity to have a chance to hear it firsthand again and to join the Mindset Matters crew here. For those that are your first time on Mindset Matters, I guess, we are going to have, unscripted discussion here. We are talking about wellness, and we're talking about mental wellness. We're talking about physical wellness. We're talking about connection, and I think it's really a great thing that Mindset Matters is doing, and doing that through shared experiences. As a non-police officer, I didn't grow up in a policing family. And I've been working closely with Encompas and the OPPA and the OPPVA for the last 4 years, and the connection, the interconnection um, between the policing family, I'll say, is very, it's rich, it's strong, it's admirable. People want to belong to it, and I think at the same time when it's not present, and sometimes when mental health issues come up and cause us to sort of disconnect or to keep everything inside, when we're not exercising that connection with openness, can be a deep sense of loss or or grief or loneliness, isolation. And I think, Rob, that's sort of what you've sort of been championing over the last couple of years since I've known you is, and certainly uh, the VA has done an incredible job um, of maintaining that connection, realizing the importance of that connection. So I just wondered, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the importance of the VA from your point of view and why you got involved, and some of the progress you're making, and in this goal of connection, which that's what I see when I see it every time I'm around you guys.
Thank you both to Louise and to you, Carl, for having me, first of all. It is extremely important to me because of past life experiences and being a police officer for over 30 years. And since then, being involved with the Vets Association, it's extremely important to me that I try and get the message to as many people as possible that the Vets Association is one way of maintaining that connection to policing. You and I had talked a little earlier about how policing is somewhat of a family, and it is. And a lot of people want to belong, but a lot of people do belong. And when you retire, that loss of connection, and I can tell you at least 100 people that are retired that I've talked to since then have all told me the same thing. I don't miss the job, but man, do I miss those people around me, and those because when you're living through a traumatic or a difficult period, it's really, really, really comfortable to have some people around you that you can trust. And I used to tell the story that when I'm behind the front fender of my cruiser and I'm using my revolver or pistol to shoot over top of the hood, the guy shooting over top of the hood with me, I don't care who it is. I'm really happy he or she is there. And that's just a small analogy of how it feels to be connected and to be involved in an organization, whether it be the OPP or any other policing organization, where you sometimes risk your life, and it can be very difficult. And without those connections, we tend to drift, and I have seen many people drift, and I try and talk to them on a regular basis if I can. And unfortunately, some of them don't make it. And a lot of people think that I'm going to get to be 30 years on the job on August 29th, and that's the last day I'm going to work. And they think that this is a noble thing. If you don't do a little planning ahead of time and you don't get yourself ready ahead of time, it'll be the most horrible thing you'll ever live with. And I know this from experience. I left the organization before I wanted to leave the organization. And unfortunately, those were the circumstances that lived with me. I was going to be transferred to Aurelia, and I didn't want that. And my 30 years were done. But in any case, that's just one little example. But that's one of the things that I find that people need to know. They need to understand that it's not just the Vets Association. I want you to join the Vets Association. I want people to continue feeling that camaraderie and that connection to the organization. But they also need to look after their, as my good friend Jeff Simpkins says, you need to maintain being an athlete. And he defines an athlete as even a person with a walker who is walking. That's an athlete. And I agree with him. You need to look after your physical self, very much so. And you also need to look after your mental self. And I think that's where the Vets Association helps with the mental part, because when you go to a vets meeting or when you're involved with vets, you're involved with people who have been through exactly what you're going through or going to go through. And that's important because sometimes we need advice as we get a little older, and it's nice to have people I will call experts on retirement because they're all retired and they've lived through it. And the other thing is that I have to say that again, physical, mental, but there's also a spiritual side to it. And I won't get into that because some people don't agree with me, but I do believe in souls. And I do believe that there is a reason to maintain that side of your body and your mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're, from a clinician, for those that don't know, I'm a social worker as well, and I often think about from a clinical standpoint, I look for the overlaps and sort of general, sort of human behavior, and I attach that to some of the research that's out there, and that the research around connection and connectivity, and I'm not afraid that the research around the spiritual components of a belief in greater things, whether it's souls or whether it's higher powers, whether it's religion, but there is spiritual connection. That's what builds connection. It's an essence around connectivity, is that there's a spirit. It's a sense of belonging when you're not belonging. So it also builds our sort of attachment and connection to others. So I think from, maybe I'll back up a little bit, because you said that it's important to have a plan, and Jeff, I know Jeff, it's important to be an athlete. I think police officers and their families, I would say from the general population, are high performing people. I call you. You're high performing people. You're driven. You're goal oriented. You've gone through significant detailed training. You're the sacrifices that everyone puts up with, either on the job or at home, when your family members are on the job, and your kids. That there is some, you're high performing people. I like the comparison to athletes of any kind. There's a determination, and there's a expectation for the self. And I think sometimes when we struggle with our mental health, with some of the thoughts and feelings, and we're just not feeling ourselves, or we're sad, or we're angry, or we're confused, that expectation is disappointing to ourselves. We're not meeting our own expectations. And I wonder if that's also when people retire, if their own expectation of that, look, I'm out of, policing is a grind from what I understand. It's not an easy job. It's not all heroism, and there's a grind of daily dealing with sort of the chaos of communities. And I want the expectation to feel elated, and that's the best thing ever. Once that 30 years is done, your punch will never return. There's a disappointment in that, I would guess.
Well, I agree with you, Carl. And the other thing that's very important, of course, is in order to survive as a police officer, it's very, very important that you lean on family also, and that you have that support from your family. The policing family, when you're working with fellow police officers, there's an inferred cooperation, there's an inferred family. Some periods are tremendous boredom, and other periods are absolute sheer terror. So other police officers understand that can happen. Family, on the other hand, doesn't get to understand that as much as I would like to see them understand it. I was very fortunate, or I'll say unfortunate, to work in a one-person detachment. I was posted to Duberville once for almost 3 years, and the second time for 2.5 years. And when you're in
Wait a second, Rob.
one-person,
Where's Duberville? I don't know if I've heard of it. except for from you, I know from previous conversations, but for the listeners, where's Duberville?
Duberville is approximately half an hour north of Wawa, 25 minutes in off of Highway 17, between Wawa and White River. So it's what we will call the middle of nowhere. And it was a one-man detachment. And what happens in a one-man detachment or even a two-person detachment is that your family gets to live policing like you do. Some typical police officers, they put their uniform on, they go to work, they come back, they kiss their wife, they kiss their children, they kiss their husband, and it's done. You know, they're done for the day. Other police families, they get to actually see it. And when I can tell you, all four of my children and my wife witnessed me fighting with two guys on my front lawn. And it's hard to understand that that can make quite a difference to you.
Yeah.
So that's where that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is that I went through a very difficult time in Duberville. As a matter of fact, the second time I was there, I was shot 3 times on duty. And had it not been for my police family, the officers in Wawa and White River and the rest of the OPP, I would have had a difficult time surviving. But I can tell you that without my family's support, I definitely wouldn't have survived. It's hard to try to make someone understand how that can affect a person when you come that close to being killed. It can be very difficult, and it also creates a lot of changes in your how you work and how you do things and how you think. So that was difficult. And had there been Encompas, had there been services in those days, I would have definitely taken advantage of them, because what I did, in fact, was lean on police family and my own family for support. But not all officers are able to do that. That's not an easy thing to do. I can explain that because I have that experience. It's not an easy thing to ask for help. We have this expectation that, well, you're in charge, you're a police officer, and you should know what to do. And yes, some of my senior officers said, suck it up, get over it. And those words, suck it up and get over it, just made me very angry. They didn't solve any of my problems. But that was the mentality of senior officers in my day. You know, a detective inspector coming to my hospital room when I've got tubes and stuff stuck on me, I've got a cast on, I was shot hours before. He comes in and says, you know, you should have shot at those guys first. Well, let me tell you, when you're
In
from
hindsight,
Toronto, if you're from Toronto and you're here to help, well, I can tell you what I did. I looked at the nurse. There was a nice nurse that was looking after my room and myself. And I said, could you do me a favor? Throw this guy out. And she did.
good, good, yeah, good. You don't need
Which
an
was part of
armchair quarterback after you've been
that
shot.
was part of survival.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I
So,
think there is, having some, some grit is important, and some individual grit, but it's certainly without resources, that grit only just gets internalized, I think is what you're saying, and it's just, it's an empty encouragement to just suck it up. It's sort of very, increasingly isolating, as if it's not okay to be uncomfortable or to be terrified in that role and to talk about it and still continue to work.
well, I think what happens, Carl, is that you start looking at yourself in the mirror thinking that you're less of a good person than you really are.
Mhm.
And you have a tendency to think of yourself as the failure because you're not coping with a very serious situation or a traumatic incident or whatever it is. I can tell you another situation where I was a young officer in Sturgeon Falls, and a 7-year-old boy got hit by a train and killed. And I had to attend an autopsy, do an investigation, and then go home and look at my 7-year-old son. And I can tell you that those are the kinds of things that do affect you very seriously. And if you don't know how to get help to deal with those things, then they're going to be internalized and they're not going to go away. They're not going to get better. And that's what Encompas and anyone else that actually just sits down and talks with somebody that's been through something can help.
I think it's really important that with the association with the VA is that it can't be overstated the importance of peer support. You know, just as you sort of were able to lean in Duberville, and you were able to do that and not get discouraged. It sounds like, you go all the way through to superintendent in the Northeast region. You didn't get discouraged. Well, not that you didn't feel discouraged along the way, but you stuck at it by leaning in. And I think that peer support, the peer-to-peer, knowing that someone has a lived experience and has resources or education that you've sort of worked on to make sure is out there. I think that's a really powerful combination. If to be educated and to have lived peer experience, we know that's got to make a greater strides than someone like, an outsider like myself coming in trying to help out.
Well, yeah, I agree with you partly, Carl. The problem I'm having is that peer support is great. However, many of my peers that were trying to support me in those very trying times had no idea whatsoever how to do that.
Right.
They did not have training. They did not have the wherewithal to understand. Offering a shot of rye that's a very brotherly or sisterly thing to do, but that doesn't solve the problem, is what I'm trying to say.
That's right.
And others understood because they had been through trauma or difficult times, so they were a little more quiet and knew how to listen. But again, in my day, and I just hate to use those words because it makes me feel like I'm old and that I'm not connected with today. But the point is that when I was working, when I was going through difficult times in the OPP, no matter what they were, is that there were no services. We had a forced psychologist when I became, I think, a staff sergeant or an inspector in the OPP. And the stigma attached to asking for help should be the most simple thing in the world. Ask for help. I'm drowning. Can you hold my hand and pull me out of the water? How hard is that? However, when it's a mental issue, it's impossible almost. Sometimes it is. Most times it is, I believe. And what I'm trying to get across is that you're not alone. Whoever you are, whatever you're going through, you are not alone. And today, as we speak today, it is so easy to receive help, to get that helping hand, to talk to somebody who has been trained and knows how to help you. And that's so important. And I think that's what the vets do a lot. I talk about it almost every month. I'll say every month I put out a newsletter, and I mention mental health in each of those newsletters because I have friends that have sat in their living room and put a gun in their mouth. And I'll tell you, it's just an awful thing. I feel a terrible loss because I feel, gee, if we could only have shot the breeze for a few minutes, we might have changed your mind. I had an opportunity to actually talk to somebody who was contemplating it, and I didn't even know. And after I talked to him, the next day he sent me an email and he said, "You saved my life. I was going to do it." Wow, that's powerful. So and that's just one little thing at the vets, people say, "Oh, it's just a social club. It's no big deal. A bunch of old guys, they don't know what I'm going through." Well, good luck with that. I've even told the commissioner, Commissioner Carrick asked me, is there any way I can help? I said, yes, support the vets. Because I can tell you right now, there is nothing that the OPP as an organization for policing can go through that the members of the vet have not been through. They've been through all of that. And the base of experience and knowledge that resides in the OPP vets is astonishing. It really is. At our monthly meetings in North Bay, on a regular basis, I get up and I ask one of the members to tell a story. And they never know who it is because I choose them at random. And they sometimes fear the idea, but I'll tell you, once they start spewing out a story about something that happened to them, what happens is the rest of us all can relate to that. We know what that person went through, and we empathize with them. We understand, and they see that they were not alone. They have friends who understand. So, a group of like-minded people is pretty powerful.
It sure is. I mean, well, just the amount of experience and the usefulness of the VA, I think, is what I'm, hearing you say, is saying, look, don't cast this aside. There's a whole group of people and I've been to your meetings. I'm a member. That's how open you guys are to let me in, and I really appreciate what you're doing. You can say a little bit about you're doing a call out, actually, right? I mean, you guys are actually phoning each other as well, which I know there's a number of people, even before you become a veteran, there's a number of people off work as there was when you were in active duty, I know, Rob, but and currently it's still a concern of the association, and everybody's thinking about it, I think, and people out there aren't as alone as they might perceive. But you guys are pretty active and have an active call out program, right?
Absolutely. What we well, after that call that I made to one of our members that resulted in him being helped by Encompas, by the way, I can tell you that I sat there as the new president of the organization thinking, what should I accomplish this year? And that's one of the things that we came up with as a board. We have 9 members on the board, not just me. And we came up with what we called Vets Watch. And it's being piloted as we speak in 18 chapter, which is a really barrier area. But I want to make sure that everyone understands it's not just a call out. It's not just somebody calling a vet once in a while to see how they're doing. We insisted that these volunteers that are going to do the call train signs about a person. You could call a person at any random time and say, how are you doing, Fred? Or how are you doing, Alice? The point is, when you ask a certain question or key words that you might use, you can get a general idea that this person may be struggling. If they're struggling, then the Vets Watch idea is not just a call, send somebody to see them. And if that's not good enough, here's a bunch of 800 numbers, and we really would think that you should give somebody a call. And that's what we're trying to accomplish with that. Again, it was just a random call I made to this member, which I do on a regular basis because I'm the secretary of Chapter 12, as well as the president of the organization. And I have been the secretary more or less since 1999. That's the reason I joined the vets. My staff sergeant was the chair, and he said, I need a secretary, and you're a superintendent. I like to make sure I order around a superintendent. So the point is that the vets provide a very valuable service. As far as I'm concerned, it's very valuable. But it's not just for retirees. We have active members who have joined the vets. Anyone contemplating retirement and not knowing exactly what they want to do in retirement, I strongly suggest join the vets, ask questions. These people you're going to be talking to have done it. They've been there. The financial part, the family part, everything, they've been through it. And that's important. The other thing is that, as you mentioned, we have, and the OPP has a lot of members that are off on various reasons, sick leave or stress leave or whatever it is. Join the vets. First of all, the first year is free. There's no question. It's free. No big deal, okay?
Yeah.
It don't cost nothing. If you don't like it, you can leave.
That's right.
But the point is, don't forget that you have friends, that you have people you can lean on. And these people understand.
Mhm.
And I know
And
I'm
every-
going on, Carl, but I don't,
Mhm.
it's a very important thing to me. And if we today or anytime save one life or help one person, I'm happy.
That's right. That's right. I mean, there's no value greater than, we all, I think, we'd all agree with that. So you came through a time before you arrived at it, you came through a time where things were sort of like we all had this sort of John Wayne or Clint Eastwood or depending on who your movie heroes were, but it was a shot of whiskey and silence, right? I mean, those guys didn't really talk much, so it, can you talk a little bit about that, what that it's like to try to open up and the connection and the collab, the people are there, the friends are there to lean on, but what's it like to try to almost sometimes I always say, when I'm doing where you're trying to cough out your first few feelings, you're trying to get that out because it's so much, it feels very hard to talk about for lots of reasons.
Certainly, I don't have any trouble talking about it at all. I can tell you that June the 1st, 1980, I was 29 years old. I was a young man. I had been an OPP officer for 7 years. I'm posted in a one-person detachment. I'm responsible for looking after 1,160 people in a small community in the middle of the bush. Two of those guys decided that they didn't like the way I was doing my job and that they were going to end my life that night. Unfortunately, I didn't know about that until a little bit too late. But in any case, by the grace of God, or whatever you might want to call it, I don't care who you believe or what you believe in, I was very fortunate because I was face to face with two people, one of them armed with a revolver, who pulled it out and started shooting. Hit me once in the shoulder. The bullet hit my shoulder blade and out my back. The second bullet hit me in the knee and went right through my knee. And the third bullet hit me in the same knee and traveled up my leg, and I still have it. Now, those situations, that terror that happens when you're married to the wonderful Suzanne and you've got 4 beautiful children at home, and you're thinking, oh my God, I may not see them again. I wouldn't want anyone to live through that. But then the aftermath of that, that's where things became much more difficult, Carl. The command staff was a bunch of old guys, 30 plus years on the job. Suck it up, move on. Well, those words are just great, but they just don't work. And because I was in Duberville and I was in a one-person detachment, I think that I became a bit of an embarrassment to the OPP because I was injured, because I got shot, because the OPP at that time had police orders. Police orders strictly said that don't go to a domestic, you don't go to a licensed premises, you don't go to certain calls without 2 officers. Well, how do you do that when you've got one-person detachment? And I deeply felt that the OPP was embarrassed by my being shot. And I received very little support, very, very little support from the actual OPP, the command staff or anything else. As a matter of fact, I got told, suck it up, move on. And when you're close to a situation like that, you start realizing that maybe it's me. Maybe it's not the organization. Maybe it's me. I did something wrong, or I should have thought about this, or I should have been more careful, or on and on and on. You want to second
You
guess yourself.
internalize the embarrassment, right? You start to become embarrassed about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You start thinking that it's you. It's not the organization and stuff.
Mhm.
And then that happened on June the 1st, 1980. On July the 1st, 1981, Rick Verdecchia, one of our officers and an officer I knew, was shot and killed on duty. And Neil Hirchibis, who was in a Aurelia detachment at the time, got shot 2 or 3 times after stopping a speeding car. And suddenly, the organization became so concerned about these situations that it became a big deal. All of a sudden, these 2 officers, one killed and one shot on duty, was a big deal. And I'm thinking, I'm sitting in Duberville, I'm still there, I'm recovering. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. They never even said thank you. They never even said, are you okay? And yet here they're pinning medals on Neil Hirchibis and they're having a big police funeral. And I'm thinking, oh my God, it is me. It is me. It's not the OPP. I've done something wrong. I should have never been a police officer. I'm lousy at it. I don't know what I'm doing. And on and on. And only through talking with fellow officers and using the support of my family was I able to survive through all of that. And I can tell you, it was not an easy thing to survive through. And I wish there would have been services available because I was certainly needed them. I don't know that I would have used them because again, you think it's me. I've done something wrong.
It must have been difficult to find the first word or find the words to talk about it when we don't have role models, when when it's not as embedded in the organization as it is in it, today, like more recently in the last few years. But it must have been hard to find the words of what do you even say to somebody to let out what you're feeling inside.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. And what I can tell you is that throughout my career, after my shooting and after my survival of the trauma following that shooting, I can tell you that I have worked my entire life after that to help fellow officers who have been through trauma and been through a difficult time. I became a peer counselor when the program was just starting. I became a trauma counselor after that. And I can tell you that I hope that I helped a lot of people. And when you're a counselor and when you're even when you're just a member of the vets and you help someone, you don't know you helped them. You say, oh well, I'm new, I'm wasting my time. But you're not. You have no idea. You have no idea how you touch lives when you talk to someone or try and help someone, whether it's a member of the public or a fellow police officer. And that's important.
Is it you emphasize the importance of listening, right? If you're somebody who's wants to be open, and if someone's struggling to find words to explain how they're feeling inside, it can start whether it's anger or sad, it can be anger at anything, but the listening is key, is that peer and validating as well. Not only validating that it's okay to feel that way, we all say it's okay, but also validating from your own lived experience. And you sort of, from your story, I sort of hear 2 things. One, you were shot 3 times and faced death, and then also though you have an understanding of what it's like, and especially, I think over the last year and a half, how many police officers we've lost who have been shot and killed or died in the line of duty. It's certainly something that is on everybody's mind when they go to work now, and the families of them, and also the officers themselves. So that's a piece I know that you guys are also talking about, and that you must have, when you were, you must have persevered to say, how do you reconcile that? How do you talk about someone who is obviously, when you face the ultimate sacrifice, and your colleagues pay that?
Well, I agree with you. It's a very difficult thing to start opening up. But what happens when you do start telling or talking or trying to get somebody to understand what you're going through? It's liberating. It is very liberating, and it's healing. It helps you deal with what it is that you're going through. As I said, if I'm drowning and I've got my hand stuck out of the water and somebody grabs my hand and pulls me out, I don't care who they are. I'm so happy they were there at that moment. And I see the importance, as you say, is silence or listening. Because today people are not good listeners. They tend to they tend to want to talk with you and converse with you. There's a tendency to think that because of the way social media is, and there's always this interaction. But that idea of sitting there and quietly listening to someone tell you what they're going through is super important. And it's okay to be quiet for 10 or 20 or 30 seconds. It doesn't matter. It's still important. And I had a few friends that helped me through that. Sometimes it was the gang in Wawa. We'd be playing poker once a month. We got an overtime check, and we'd all go and play poker. Not for a lot of money, but the fact was we were getting together. And sometimes I'd start telling my story, and 7 or 8 people around the table would be quiet for a half an hour. Let me vent it out. They'd listen. And at the end, they always said the same things. Man, am I ever glad you told me this stuff.
Yeah.
So because they'd been through difficult times and they understood. And that's so important. And again, that's what the vets do. When we get together, it sounds like we just have a luncheon together and we're just sort of getting together because it's a big social club. But it's more than that. It's more than that. It's a reconnection to that family that we left. So it's important.
Yeah, that's a beautiful, story or an example, I guess, around just people listening and then validating or appreciating you for sharing. And, when I hear you talk, I guess, and explain it and process it, I guess, the the key piece I think also you're doing is you're also evolving, like in retirement, you're maintaining the connection and the camaraderie and sharing the stories that only you will have. I call that shared life experience of policing. I don't share obviously those stories. I'm not a police officer, but you also sort of evolve it around it, whether it's family or traveling or you're interested in what life after policing is, and so you maintain the connection. It doesn't, which the connection comes through the work, but it's not all about the work either, right? It's all about your identity and who are you as a person. It's actually you get a chance to a deeper connection in some ways.
I agree with you, Carl. It's not just talking about trauma, by the way. I don't want to depress anyone here, but it's also about a lot of other things. I can tell you that through the Vets Association, I've listened to people tell me that they're worried about their finances. They're worried about their children and their family and how they've differently interact with them after retirement and how they're frustrated and how they're having trouble because I'll give you another example. One of our members says, I tend to go out and buy a new car every year. And I found out that it's nice to do that, but I can't afford it anymore.
Mhm.
And the reason he can't afford it anymore is because he's doing it every year. It's a losing proposition, of course, because a car depreciates quite a bit in the first year. But when you have those kinds of reactions, it's really nice to have somebody listen to you and say, "Well, I've got a suggestion. Why don't you keep the car you got for 3 years?"
Yeah.
Which seems like a very innocuous suggestion, but the point is that Yes, it works.
Yeah, that's right.
So
That's right.
there's a lot of other things that people feel as they move through their life and through their retirement. I can tell you that Sue was not very happy with me when I retired from the OPP. I was a superintendent. I was working, I'll say, average of between 80 and 90 hours a week. I was a very busy person, and I got home, and that was it. I'm retired. And she did not take kindly to my suggestion of organizing the kitchen alphabetically. She did not think that was very good. You know, pepper, plates, paprika, they should all be in the same plate.
You might, you're, all those attentions to details that were work required are now going to apply to the family space cooking.
Well, I can tell you, no, that wasn't a good idea at all.
I know I know I've met Suzanne, and I think most of the VAs have at the meetings, but I know you attribute, but you know, you get to know people pretty intimately when you're on the job, and maintaining that and letting that evolve so that, you know, sometimes we all have work personas, you know, like you know, how Jen and Louise perceive me. I might be very protective about that. Now, I openly fail in front of Jen and Louise all the time, and I ensure that, you know, because, but I, but people are concerned about they've presented like they're holding it together, and they're presented strong and doing well, and then after, you know, when you're not at work, or when you to really, you know, deepen some of those connections, you have to let those vulnerabilities show. And I know that if you don't feel comfortable showing, it's even more isolating. And Suzanne has no problem pointing out your vulnerabilities, Rob. But can you talk maybe a little bit about that letting that guard down a little bit, and how you do that, and as someone who's, you know, as accomplished as you are?
Well, I suppose the easiest way for me to answer your question is that it's important that you realize that it's not about you. It's not, and not to internalize that it's just a word, internalize, but it's not within you. It needs to get out of you. It needs to, because it's self-destructive. You say, okay, well, I should be stronger. Oh, I can handle that. Oh my God, I heard him, you know, oh, don't worry about that. I've actually talked to one member that retired not terribly long ago, and he said, I don't need the vets, I don't need the OPP, I don't need anybody. Well, I can tell you that that person, and I continue to talk to that person, by the way, that person will suffer difficulties because it's not possible for a person to be an island unto themselves and shut everything else out and thinking that that's going to make everything better. It doesn't. It makes things worse because we personally, our minds don't have the capability of being able to pull us out of the water. You know, I'm drowning. I got my hand out. Help me, pull me out. When you're in the water and you're drowning and no one's there to help pull you out, you can't say, well, I know what I'm going to do. Well, you're drowning. What are you going to do? And I think that's the most important message that I can partake with what you're saying, is that it's difficult to do if you've never done it. But once you do, once you use that crutch or whatever you want to call it, of friendship, family, however, Encompass, whoever, whatever, boots on the ground, I don't care who it is. The point is, once you make that step, it's liberating. It really is. It allows you to realize that it's not you. It's not about you. It's a fact of life. You've had this experience. It's affected you. You've been traumatized, but you can deal with it, not alone. I don't know anyone who can deal with it alone. I don't. It's not an easy thing.
I agree. We want people to know they're not alone, and we're here for them. That's the purpose of the Veterans Association. It's a shared purpose of Encompass, obviously, is to be there for you, just as in your role as a police officer, or in the family of a police officer in communications. Your role is to really be there for the community. You know, the community is we're a sort of chaotic community fraught with troubles and issues and crises um, and beautiful things as well. But the police officers and their families have a sacrifice around that, and we're here for you because you were here for us, and we're always deeply appreciated that. And Rob, it's hard to imagine you not not being open. I know Suzanne probably was a bit of will light a fire under you if you're holding it in, and also maybe to find a hobby if you're trying to alphabetize your kitchen. So but you did make the choice to talk, and it wasn't easy. And although you're talking about it easily now, I appreciate your vulnerability today over this session. And it is making a difference. The Veterans Association is making a difference. I see that firsthand when I participate, and I feel it as well. And I just wanted to really appreciate you for having the courage to do that, and for your family supporting you, and you supporting them, and the rest of us now as we go through. And yeah, I just want to honor you. Thanks. I know you talk easily today, but I know and believe it hasn't been easy for you always.
Well, Carl, I hate to tell you this, you can ask your dad. Life is not easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a bowl of cherries, it just isn't. But if you look around you and you can appreciate the wonderful life that you're leading, I look at OPP retirees, and a lot of them start by complaining, my benefits aren't good, or my pension's not good. I don't know how they can say that. We have an excellent pension. We have unbelievable benefits, including Encompas, free of charge. Who can complain about that? But as we get older, we tend to decide that, woe is me, and I'm getting old. I'm sore when I get up in the morning. I've got little things wrong with me. So I'm heading into the wrong direction from my perspective. But the point is, where have you been? And where are you right now? And if you can appreciate each and every day that you have, I guarantee your life gets better. Really will. I had one of our retirees asked me not too long ago, he said, my grandchildren are just getting at that age where they're coming out of high school and they're going to go to university. What would you recommend as far as a job for them? I said, optometrist. He said, optometrist? I said, have you seen how many people are on their cell phone nowadays? They're going to need a lot of optometrists in the future.
It's true. It's true. It's true.
But the point is, you need to look at the positive side of everything. And if you can do that, life gets very easy. Why complain? What good does that do?
Yeah, appreciation is a purposeful act, right? I mean, that's what I say. You have to practice it. It's not an easy thing to do, especially when you're feeling low, or you're sleepless, or tired, or under different levels of stress, or feeling lost. Appreciation is a practice. It sounds like for you, despite the aches and pains of life, metaphorically, it's appreciation is a practice that's done by many people throughout the world that believe that. It's a purposeful action in your day, is to find those things to try to bring some relief to the stresses and maybe some of the negativity you're experiencing.
The other thing, Carl, that's important as far as I know is, and it leads in the same direction, is that when you have negative people around you, get away from them. It's important. It's not too bad when you're 30 years old. You could probably live through it. But when you get older, life is too short, my friend. If you've got negative people around you, move on or help them get positive. It's just it's not something that's going to help you. It's going to hurt you. And if you're going through something and you've got other people that are negative about you going through something, it's even worse.
Well, that's excellent. Well, I don't know if people have questions there, Jen or Louise. I know we're kind of getting towards our time. I don't want to, I can talk with Rob all day and we can share back and forth. I'm looking forward to seeing you at the next AGM, I guess, and see in person, Rob. I'll always show up, and I'm starting to feel guilty because I benefit from being around you more than I ever contribute. So it's you know, and I would encourage anybody else who isn't aware of the association, or if you know a retiree or not, you know, it's certainly a strong leadership. And like I said, you know, the role model of this call out pilot is something we've talked about trying to replicate for people who are off work. It's inspiring, and so is your story, Rob. And again, thank you very much to everyone. If there are questions, we do have a couple minutes. I didn't see any in the chat. I don't think I saw Dave chatting in a bit, but
there was. I hope you saw the hearts coming up there as you were talking, the accolades floating up your screen. People certainly appreciating, you know, you're so authentic and you're so open and you're so you're really very inspirational in sharing your story. So lots of accolades there. There was just kind of a request really to share where the training is. I think on the March 18th training, if there are any volunteers here on this session, that it's in the classroom 3 at GHQ. So I just wanted to pass that along. One of the participants shared that feedback.
Good, and I'm very, very happy about that. It's taken a little bit of time, but I know some of our members have said, you know, you talked about this last year, and here we are. It's not moving ahead very quickly, but I just want to make sure we do it right, Lou. It's very, very important that the volunteers get proper training, and they are going to be trained at GHQ by the wellness unit, and hopefully we'll be able to provide a manual of some kind, and which will provide other people in other chapters to roll this out through the whole province after the AGM.
Thank you. Well, Rob, thank you again so much. It's like I said, it's always it's very humbling to speak with you always, and you are such a contributor and such a supporter of your peers. And I'm hoping people heard your message about the value of the OPPVA and joining that association, and not thinking it's a bunch of old people sitting around, but that it's a very, very valuable way of connecting and learning and growing. So thank you so much.
And thank you to you and Carl, Jen, Eric, and the rest of your team for doing such wonderful work. Carry on, it's wonderful. And whenever you feel that you're doing your work and you're not getting anything accomplished, I assure you, you're doing good.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, thanks everybody today for participating. Our next session will be on Wednesday, June 5th. So look out for some updates around that. And Rob, can you see those hand claps coming up your screen there?
No, I don't, but that's okay.
Alrighty. Well, thanks so much.
Thumbs up and appreciation for sure. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Yes, and thank you, Carl, too.
And look forward to coming back. Thank you. Take care.
The best. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye now.